Today we have the honor of hosting Pranav Dalal. And it would be right to say Pranav Dalal has turned from a scientist to a developer, becoming a business analyst, and then turning to a CIO at Veeda Clinical Research. Pranav, to a 25-year-old who is listening to this podcast, would you recommend switching the streams in your career, or for you it was all natural? I mean, how does the landscape look like after 20 years if I want to change my streams today within 2, 3, 4 years of working?
Uh, I think so. I think it's a beautiful time right now, and
Yeah,
I'm going.
I'm Varshit, your host at Madrid Mavericks, sponsored by Orion Consulting, a global leader in SAP and digital transformation services. Pranav, would you like to tell us a little bit about your journey and yourself?
Sure, Varshit. Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure. So my journey. I did my engineering, electronics engineering, and then I did my PhD in computational biophysics, where I was doing computational modeling of proteins. And that took some time, and then I did a postdoctoral fellowship for a few years. I was a scientist in the initial part of my career, and then I sort of switched to the other side where I was developing software products for computational chemistry for a company called Schrodinger. Then at some point, I sort of moved into from a shallower pockets of science to slightly deeper pockets of finance
Yeah.
into a hedge fund. So I was a business analyst for one of the largest hedge funds called DE Shaw. Uh,
Amazing.
and then I worked for a few years there, involved in a spin-off where the company spun off their own platform as an offering to other hedge funds. I was involved in that spin-off for a year or so,
Okay.
and then I moved to Torrent Pharmaceuticals, again one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in India, to lead some of the laboratory digitization projects and some IT compliance as required by regulatory agencies, FDA and EMA, European Medical Agency, and others. So that was for a few years. Did some good digitization work on some laboratory processes, and then moved to a CR Clinical Research Organization, a CRO, as we call it, in called Veeda, which is and then I lead the full technology function as well. So be it support infrastructure, digitization, and sort of start moving the needle on. Obviously everybody's moving the needle on analytics and
Yeah.
AI. So
Yeah.
that's the next few things we have to work on.
Got it.
So that's my journey. I don't know if it wasn't brief enough, but or long enough.
Right.
But
But
slightly add a little personal note to this. My daughter is in 12th grade,
uh-huh.
uh, and she is going to be selecting colleges, and she's in international board. So where she has chosen economics, bio, and chemistry. These were options
Okay.
not available to me when I was there, right? So,
Right.
and she is looking at data science and economics, or psychology and economics, and so it's good. I think it's important. I love changing streams. I love changing things every
Right.
few years. There are people I know, and it's more of a personal taste because there are people who like to do same thing and get deeper into it, whereas I sort of get bored with one thing. So I do
Right.
tend to change, and I think now is a wonderful time, like because
Right.
of a lot of low code platforms, easy to use AI analytics, you can change. World is wide open. World is
I
wide open.
agree. 1%, 1%. So when did this spark started, Pranav, for you to, take hands on digital IT transformations, or, think about becoming the CIO, or getting into the IT altogether from the business analyst position? Was it the
So
time when the spin-off happened at DE Shaw?
Right. So one of the things that I have been very passionate about is leveraging technology to reduce the process process overload that we have. So when you
Yeah,
have a process of papers and Excels, you can
yeah,
imagine how much cross checking and all of that happens. So I've been very passionate about using technology to ease the day to day workloads, and
right.
that I sort of have applied, and I saw that in DE Shaw where I did that role, and then I don't know if you are very familiar with healthcare, but healthcare, especially pharma companies and life sciences, are very document heavy, very paper heavy.
Right.
So they are in a way ripe for disruption and ripe for and in need for a pure digital transformation. Uh,
Got it. Now, since you, raised that particular concern, digital transformation. I want to know, what does digital transformation mean to Veda Clinical Research today, and how has it evolved over the last few years?
So for us, like I said, we are still a paper-based business.
Yeah,
Most of CROs and a lot of pharma companies, their operations, because we get audited by FDA and by EMA,
right,
who like to see documents. But the world has changed, and so the companies are changing as well, where they are adopting a lot of their processes to move on to digital workflows, digital systems. Not only just doing that, trying to capture data from instruments also and integrating that with digital workflows. So for us, it's largely being the ability to move our paper workflows onto digital media, digital processes, and also the ability to integrate with our instruments, lab instruments, collect the data from that automatically. So and that is, I would say, step one. Step
right,
two is the way I see it, Varshit, is sort of move into analytics space. It's wonderful now I have the data. how can i how
right,
can I sort of, as a CIO, as a CTO, sort of take that and drive the business, or help the business understand the patterns, understand the analysis, and
correct,
drive that as a next step. So sort of move from, the way I see it is document to data to information is the journey.
right,
And the story I keep always telling my end users is, I have a lot of gray hair, right? So I've seen passbooks. I don't know, Varshadi, if you have seen those. But
yes,
so going to bank and getting passbooks filled, and then came the statements that you got on email. You got
right,
email statements monthly, and now nobody does that, right? You have it on app. So you moved from a document that was a passbook to a
right,
data, maybe that was a report, that was a statement, to now you just look at transactions. You're able to filter out how many 5,000 rupees transactions I did in a month, because you
right.
moved from a document to a data. So that's the analogy I giving my sort of uh, consumers, or internal consumers, that this is the journey we have to be on within the
That
organization.
makes that makes sense as well. I mean, in our last podcast with Naveen Singla at Stovecraft, he highlighted how 10 years back or 15, 20 years back, even sending an email was not very, common like it is today. So, I
Yeah,
mean, amount by which the landscape has changed is amazing altogether. Which leads
amazing.
to my next question. What is the most significant, or you think you're most proud of, one digital transformation that you've recently completed at Veda?
So one piece that we have done is we have developed our own study management system. So just to give you a little bit of context, we do about 30 studies or 30 projects, and I'll keep using these words interchangeably, a
Okay.
month. A month. So,
Okay.
what we're talking about, 350 to 400 studies or projects a month that have a defined milestones. Those were all managed and tracked in Excels, with multiple data entry, and you can imagine five people opening up an Excel is like, hey, can you please save it and close it? I need to enter the data, right? So,
Right.
we started developing an in-house system, study management system, that sort of tracks the whole process and workflow, and ability to integrate with transactional systems.
Got
So so this started, there was a when I was brought in, this was one of the things that we discussed, whether to go outside, get it from outside, or develop in-house. We decided to develop it in-house for various reasons. One is, don't like to integrate between two vendors. I would rather have one
it.
piece under my control. So it's the study
Correct.
management system, and that is what we are now developing into an enterprise data layer. That is where all my single source of truth comes in, and
Right.
that's where my data layer sits. So this is something we have completed, or at least majority of it is completed, and we are moving
Right.
that whole process and data we acquired into an analytics now.
Hmm.
Next step, and what we are trying to do is we are going to try and serve our customer best. How? Because now we are going to give them an insight into their own studies real time.
Got it.
So expose this system to the to clients themselves, so
Right.
that they can see it. They don't have to call up people or follow up. That's something that I think is going to be an amazing within Vita, what we have put together.
Good to hear. And Pranav, just to give us a little bit knowledge, let's assume, we don't know anything about clinical research. Can you give us a step-by-step process of how things happen? Who will your clients be, and what will you do for your clients? And what are the pre and post cycles? What is it during cycle? What does the team do in that cycle? Can you give us a framework?
Right. So largely we conduct clinical trials for pharma companies. So we are a B2B operation where where our clients are a lot of pharma companies, and these
Okay.
are the top pharma companies of India as well.
Okay.
uh, for whom so they manufacture the medicine, and I'm going to there's in the two types of medicine largely, right? There's innovator molecule and there is a generic molecule.
Okay.
Generic medicines, I'm sure everybody's familiar with.
Right.
So what we do is for generic medicines, what we do is we have to prove that it's the same molecule, or it acts in the body in a similar fashion as the innovator molecule. So
Right.
what we do is we dose some volunteers with both the medicines,
Right.
and then we take some samples, and that then we measure the drug concentration for both the innovator and the generic, and we show that the drug profile is the same over time. So there is a
Okay.
clinical part to it, where
Mhm.
where they're dosed and the blood samples are taken from the
Got
volunteers,
it.
and so we have almost like a like a wards and hospital. Like it's I wouldn't
Right.
say, I can't use the word hospital, but it's a medical ward.
Right.
And then the samples are analyzed through LCMS, which is lab instruments. So we have a lot of accomplished pharmacy graduates and pharmacy professionals who measure the blood profile,
Got it.
and then the report is done, and the reports are actually submitted as part of the pharma companies, what they're called the dossier, to the regulatory agencies, and the regulatory agencies are FDA, EMA,
Right.
so various drug regulatory agencies across the world, and we do get audited by them as well. So we do get audited by FDA, EMA, other companies, to make sure that the data that we produce and data we say is data is actually the correct data.
Correct.
Uh, And that's where digitization also helps, because they don't have to go through paper. They can just sit in the system and look at the data.
Completely. And the team doesn't has to spend weeks, just collaborating and submitting that data. It is already there on a platform or somewhere. All right.
Right.
Can you share with us a particular difficult decision that you had to make, and what was the outcome? Anything that has gone out of the box lately?
Luckily, not so much. Varshit. Again, the one of the difficult decision, again, going back to the study management system, where there was a discussion with management, especially that to sort of see if we can get something from outside as a project management or a study management system. Obviously, I can imagine management is nervous about developing something in house when we are not really an IT shop, right? So there was a certain, I wouldn't say discomfort, but there was certain trying to understand why would we want to develop something in house. But
Correct.
at that point, after some persuasion, the managing director agreed. I mean, rather agreed. He took the bet on me to develop
All
that,
right.
and that
Okay.
sort of has worked out well. Um, so I think that was a, and luckily, like, the outcome has been nice on that.
Got it. That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, let's talk about your views on data and analytics. How is Veda leveraging data and analytics to drive any decision?
Right. So, give you an example. Give you a couple of examples. This not only the system that I've been speaking about, but the
Hmm.
just taking something like our invoices, our payments.
Hmm.
So what we have done is that's also an in-house developed system that we have put together, approving invoices. So
Got
now I have spent data, right? I have spent
it.
data.
Right.
So now what we have done is, over the past year or so, now that we have moved from sort of documents to some structured data. So we have moved away from passbooks, if you will, in
Right.
certain areas.
Yeah.
We have looked at a couple of Tableau, Metabase, those kind of analytics engines, where we are connecting our internal data sources, and we are developing self-serve dashboards. And I spoke to quite a few industry people, and one of the things that came out is analytics is best served when it is self-serve. User should
Okay.
not be coming to a technology or a developer to build out dashboards or to analyze data. So you
Okay.
have to make it self-serve and almost easier than Excel. Then
Okay.
only then it makes sort of makes sense, and the adoption curve is not too steep. So that is what we are doing, is we are connecting various data sources to a self-serve analytics platform and slowly driving the adoption analytics. And about a few months ago, what we did was we held a town hall called automation analytics and AI.
Got
So where we got in some of the senior people, showed them the various dashboards, you know uh, give them examples of what we have achieved, and sort of give them and make it self-serve for them.
got
And that is what now I see it on the desk of my CFO, right? And
That's amazing.
that's a
That's
success, right?
amazing.
So
Yes,
the my spend dashboard is on the desk of CFO.
super. So, what I am getting from this is, we not relying on any of the external platforms like SAP or Oracle or Microsoft for our ERP systems. We have developed everything in house.
So we are currently looking at our operational processes is in-house. For the
Okay.
financial payment, what is known as P2P or S2C cycles, so, payment to procurement or sales to cash or sales to collection cycles.
Okay.
Uh, Out of that, partially it has been developed in-house, but that is something whether we are still under discussion, and figuring out whether we go a full-blown develop it in-house for P2P cycle, or do we get something from outside and put it in, because adoption again is,
Right.
you bring in an SAP, you have to almost do a full blown adoption.
Correct.
uh, Whereas if you develop it in house, you can sort of go upstream or downstream piece by piece.
Right.
uh,
Right.
uh, so those are the decisions we have to take, and those are things that we will look into.
Got it. Exactly. As a CIO, Pranav, where are you inclined to? I mean, would you rely on other partners to help you implement the challenges with the IT or everything related to it? Or would you prefer developing everything in-house?
Now, so if there is an existing competence in the market, might as well get that.
Yeah.
Um, there are obviously pros and cons to both, right?
Correct.
With SAP, we see ECC6 to an S4 HANA
Right.
migration
Right.
that everybody, yeah, S4 HANA has benefits, but everybody's sort of forced to go down that path by
Correct.
27 or 28. And
Right.
whereas if you have something in house, there is a certain curve that you can manage. On the other hand, the regulatory agencies are changing, right? The audit trail and
Right.
other things. There is a certain I would say a favorable outlook when you have an industry-based software in your premises. So
Yes.
those are sort of the two sides to the coin. Like I said, that's something. These are all things that we'll have to consider as we move forward. But if
Correct.
there is an
But
expertise that meets us, that's obviously good. So, like for a lot of our transactional systems, we have developed, like for laboratory execution system, we have taken Thermo Fisher's LES. So for where there is expertise, we do that.
that's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, I just wanted to understand the whole ideology behind developing things in house. And like you said, rather than having two vendors managing one boat, I would rather have one boat to manage.
All right.
So,
So one connection I like to hold in my hand, and which then becomes my enterprise data layer. So
correct.
the one piece that runs through the organization, I like to manage it within by myself, and
Hmm.
then convert to enterprise data layer. That's way I have to manage only one API or one
Right.
connector rather than
Right.
being the counselor between two vendors.
Makes sense. Would you say there is a lot of opportunity in this particular idea? I was speaking with one of the entrepreneurs, and we were discussing a industry specific ERP. So if a professional has been into, let's say, pharmaceutical industry or construction industry for the last 20 years, they know their challenges the best. They have seen everything on a ground level. So when they come and develop an ERP that is specifically solving the challenge of people who are doing the grunt work, would you think that as a very successful business idea, or you think that SAP maybe is comfortable with probably everything. People are comfortable using one particular UI. And how would you compare the two?
So, Varshad, I think SAP, I think, again, has a certain, I would say it makes sense for a certain company size. I know SAP has a slightly smaller version for SMEs. But yes, you are absolutely right. There is a certain value I see in having an industry specific, either a system or industry specific configuration out of the box.
Yeah,
So, you take a SAP BI and configure it for a life sciences company out of the box and then
correct,
put that out. Then there is a certain benefit because I see, I mean, I don't know, SAP projects tend to all
correct,
go
correct.
forget, I mean, go out of scope, out of budget, and go
Yes,
on for years.
yes,
But having something that is sort of configured industry wide and has an acceptance, um, then there's a. But then there's a major challenge that Varshad, that organization would face is to convince the company that this is good enough for their processes and they should not customize SAP too much. Uh,
correct,
lot of uh, trying so rather instead of adopting the processes to the system, uh, still a push to customize the system to your processes.
right,
Especially, and I am a firm believer that it's better to adopt your processes to a system, to an IT system.
right,
Your process may have been developed when you were using paper methodology, and so
correct.
you should take an opportunity to do a business process re-engineering and come to a standard process. So that's where the change management sort of comes into play.
I 100% agree. I mean, whatever we are solving for, writing it down first, making a roadmap first, and then going out looking for a solution, not the other way around. This is
No.
the solution available, and now let's track the problem we have.
Yeah.
So I completely agree, 1%. And what are the key challenges in managing or integrating data across your organization? Let's say collection or moving it through the funnel or getting it into your data analytics funnel. Do you face any challenges with that at Veda?
So I think almost all IT architecture leaders face this challenge is
Yeah,
duplication of data.
yeah, right,
You have same data being duplicated multiple times, and this is one of the things that my mentor and my leadership team at D Shaw sort of told me, and it was because part of the reason is while I was there, I was working through, there was a big project that was taken up because after 15 years, multiple applications, multiple silos of data, there was a whole project called Golden Source of Truth, Golden Source
right.
of Data.
Okay,
So building out an enterprise data layer. So I think that is one thing that in the past 8-10 years after I saw that, I've been very clear that one should have a single, one golden source of truth
yeah,
uh,
right,
and that flows through your system, and that's what helps analytics possible. So you can call it your enterprise data layer or your data warehouse or whatever it is. uh,
right,
that should be sacrosanct, and that will help, and that is one thing you should ensure in your architecture.
right, correct. And moving on to another function of a company, Pranav, if we talk about the customer experience, since we are into the B2B side of it, do we have anything in our IT arsenal that is helping Veda improve its customer experience?
Right. So I spoke to you earlier about the system, the study management system. What we are looking to put together is a client-facing landing page. The
Okay,
ability for client to come in and sort of see what is the status of their projects, raise a query right there, see their documents. So because we also send out documents to clients, have to sign some documents, so make them available on the same platform, uh, integrated view of their whole journey with us, if you will,
correct.
and where each project is in what phase of the journey.
Right.
And so that is something that we are working to put together, and I think that will enhance the customer experience quite a bit.
Makes sense, and that's very nice.
Yeah.
Uh, what is your view on partnerships in digital transformation journey? And if you were to onboard one, what would you look for in a technology partner? I think we have discussed this a lot, But just one last thought on this.
And my key takeaway would be that the technology partner should understand the space we are operating
Right.
in. Sometimes, in healthcare, and every industry is unique. Every industry has its own set of challenges. So the technology partner should bring in an domain expert within the field. So because each challenge is unique, the language is different, vocabulary is different, and if somebody understands on the other side the vocabulary and the language, the
Correct.
the end user within the organization will feel much more comfortable,
I
uh,
agree. I
and
agree.
and will feel that this people understand my challenges,
I
and I think
agree.
that's very important.
1%, 1%. And looking ahead, Pranav, what are your goals and aspirations for the future? I mean, it's already been some time you have served as the CIO. What's next? Are you looking to
So
upgrade?
yeah, so one of the things that I did mention, right? We moved from document to data to we are in the analytics. Next is predictive analytics and AI. So we are
Correct.
looking at some Gen AI projects. We are trying to put together some Gen AI. We have done some POCs.
Okay.
One area has been lead profiling.
Okay.
So we had a bunch of leads, quite a up to 1,000 leads. Now, how to profile them? It's difficult to manually search each one of them, right? So
Right.
we with the help of a partner, we put together a small tool which
Right.
basically was able to search and help us profile it from web data and use Gen AI to help filter out which leads to focus on.
Right.
So the other thing is we have a lot of documents, SOP, standard operating procedures, the regulations. So build out a sort of a document repository that a user at Veeda can chat with.
Right.
Yeah, how do I do this? If I have my training manuals uploaded there, those are the kind of chats and other things that I would do with them. So Gen AI is something that we intend to focus on. We are also going through a lot of industry is going through a lot of revolution, because as you know, if you have an Apple Watch, it just 2 days ago it got approved by FDA as a sleep apnea detection tool,
Correct.
right? So now there are a lot of data that's available on our wearables. Can we integrate with our systems, with our clinical trial systems, to get so that it's easier for patients? They don't have to come to the hospital. We can run clinical trials from anywhere, and this is known as a decentralized clinical trials. Can I tap into existing electronic health records? India has been a lot of doctor paper files, but I think hospitals are changing. Can we start tapping into electronic health records to do our clinical trials? Um,
Got
the,
it.
the, and then everybody else, every other industry is looking at digital twins, right? So can we start looking at patient's life journey as a digital twin?
Right.
Um, so an interesting and a wild world out there to tap into.
That's
Just
crazy. And, makes me want to ask you so many more questions on these lines. I mean, just this one particular thing. Does Veda has any project like this wherein data is being captured from a smartwatch and, that data is being used for the clinical trials of any drug or a medicine?
so Varshit, not yet, but
Okay.
this is something that we are discussing.
Okay.
How to leverage, like I said, the wearables, EHRs, digital twins, Gen AI.
Yeah.
How to define our strategy on those things.
I agree. Wild word out there. And how do you see the role of CIO evolving over the next decade?
So I think so far largely CIOs have come from a technology background.
Correct.
And now with a lot of self-serve analytics and self-serve and low-code platforms, I think that will change where a CIO, and we're starting to see, right? CIOs are starting to come from operational roles.
Correct.
The challenge of having the right technology to generate the data and the analytics is an accomplished challenge. So CIOs will have to be more of a business partner or come from business itself,
Yes.
and help serve the business. So I see the CIO CTO role sort of bifurcating in that sense. I think it has started to, but even more so in the next few years.
That's great. That's great. That's amazing. I mean, I think lately it has been the case when CIO roles have started to pick up the pace that they have picked up
Right.
with so much tech coming in, and every other company out there wants to be the front runner, forerunner in this tech marathon to
Right.
take leverage and advantage of the opportunity. So it was a wonderful experience, Pranav, to know your journey, your experiences throughout, the last 20 years, and especially at Veda. How did you feel sharing your experiences and any feedback or recommendations you have?
No, it was wonderful talking to you, Varshit. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and we have be having this chat. It was absolutely a pleasure talking to you.
Super, that's great. I'll stop the recording for once.
Sure.